All right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John,
And I'm Jack.
and this week we are doing a bonus reel for you all, and we will be reviewing the hit musical turned film 1776.
Yeah, it was quite the biopic, you know. I didn't know there was so much singing involved with the Declaration of Independence, but more the fool is I. Saltpeter.
Pins!
Saltpeter.
Oh, what do you think is more important? Saltpeter or
Saltpeter.
pins?
You already know the answer, saltpeter. Like, I mean, yeah, you could load pins in a cannon, but without saltpeter, those pins ain't going nowhere.
I didn't even realize that, it wasn't until watching this film that I understood saltpeter to be, a component of gunpowder.
Mm-hmm.
So at least I got that going for me as learning something new.
Mm-hmm. Is that the stuff that's all the ingredients to such are like found in volcanoes?
I think so. Or is that sulfur?
Probably sulfur. Because a book I read recently, one of the antagonists' gang runs out of gunpowder when they're about to get killed, and he guides them to a volcano, and he digs up bat guano, and I think it was sulfur, and he digs a pit in the ground, mixes it together, and he has all the men piss on it, and yeah, it like lets it bake in the sun, and voila, he has rudimentary gunpowder.
That sounds like the worst, easy bake oven recipe ever.
Oh, it's a blast. It's like the
It's
fourth
like the
time I've
fourth
made
time
that
I've made that.
joke on this podcast.
This episode would have been a lot more um would have been a lot more seasonal had we gotten it out the day that we had originally planned it to be, which was 4th of July. But
Yeah, that was my bad.
unfortunately, scheduling works out and fun.
It really does.
So, had you ever seen this film before?
Mm-mm. I hadn't even heard of it.
So so I know I did a poor job of describing this film to you.
No, you didn't.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think I just told you, think of it as like a goofy Hamilton.
Yeah, you told me it's a musical about the Declaration of Independence, and I got exactly what was written on the tin. It was, in fact, a goofy musical, kind of in the vein of Hamilton, with worse choreography, but Hamilton like nonetheless. You know?
Right. I actually had this brought up kind of a weird memory for me. So the first time I ever saw this film was actually, I think it was sophomore English class. And it kind of kills me because I have no recollection whatsoever in what context our teacher decided to show this to us for. I just I just remember watching 1776 the musical in sophomore English class, and apparently it had some sort of relevance to the subject, but I couldn't tell you. But even as a sophomore in high school, I'm like, what in the fuck is
I had a couple of those moments. And there is one potential inaccuracy I'd like to bring up. Um, there's that part where Benjamin Franklin was whatever, campaigning for the turkey to be this country's bird and symbol. but in real life, he like jokingly proposed that years later in a letter.
I mean, the turkey is a
No, it
wiser
isn't.
bird.
Turkeys are stupid. They're literally one of the dumbest domesticated. Well, they're not even domesticated. What's the word for this? Dumbest farm animal, whatever. But they're really stupid.
To be fair, I have seen a turkey fly into a barbed wire fence before, so I
Man,
can see
there
it.
was one time on the ranch where a turkey was roosted in like this branch in a tree right across the draw from where I lived, and it tried to take off, but there was twine around its feet that got caught in the branch, so he was just hanging upside down. Man, it was kind of freaky to look at. It was like the spirits or the old gods of the field were sending us a message. Tasty birds, though. I do like some turkey.
It just reminds me of that one joke from King of the Hill. Tell me, John Redcord, do you people even celebrate Thanksgiving?
Once. Yeah. There is a sordid history behind that holiday. But speaking of sordid history, remember that one part in the movie where who was it that proposed like, oh, we should free the slaves, and the southern states are like, lol, no, and they're like, well, come on, you gotta free the slaves, and they're like, okay, we'll help you out in this war as long as we get to keep our slaves. How does that sound? This surely won't lead to any conflicts in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that was the. Like, that genuinely was a huge point of contention
Mm-hmm.
when they were going through this whole revolution process because I mean, something you have to think about is like not only have they made the decision to separate from at this point in world history the most powerful empire in the world, um, like that's not a task to sneeze at. But secondly, like, okay, you are now creating your own country and you have to decide what it is your country is supposed to look like and what it's supposed to stand for, and that's very hard when you have 13 very distinct and separate you know groups of people or colonies that you know it's like that saying from National Treasure where it's like it wasn't until the Civil War that it was the United States are America, and then it got switched to United States of America type
Yeah.
feeling or mentality.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was like I know it's kind of a hard thing to wrap around, especially seeing as we fought a war like 80 years later over the whole slavery thing, and like the first 80 years of American history is literally like if you just look at congressional history, it's literally just like every 4 or 5 years, it's some sort of nonsense dealing with this issue where it's like, no, we can't let this expand, or no, we can't do this, that, or the other. And then you have, basically a lot of concessions towards the South because it's like essentially what they ended up doing, which is like, screw you guys, I'm going home. Like, but I mean, the idea of emancipation, like, it wasn't this like super radical concept at the time of the Declaration of Independence, and it was a like there was supposed to be a clause in there about the importation of slaves, and obviously we know why that got did away with is because Obviously the South wasn't real big on giving up on people owning yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say, although slavery is a terrible institution, it did lead to the greatest song in this entire movie.
Yep, rum and molasses and slaves, the triangle trade.
Molasses and rum to slaves.
Nailed it.
Clink, clink.
Yeah, let's see. Seventh grade history, the triangle trade. It went manufactured goods from Europe to the colonies in Africa. Africa gave the slaves. Middle Passage was slaves to North and South America. And then the sugar cane and other like furs and shit from North America to Europe. A lot of people got rich off that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is you could literally, and there's a lot of topics in history that are like this, but you could spend your entire life studying nothing but the mid-Atlantic slave trade and you would still never fully understand it. Like you could get a pretty good grasp on it, but it like that particular practice, like there's so many different parts of it. Like because you have the trade aspect, but then like you have half of a country that like this is probably a poor example or a poor way of relating it, but it's like how we had the Cold War and it was based on economic systems,
Yeah,
capitalism versus communism.
economics and governing styles.
Right. The You could almost think of the slave trade as like America's original Cold War because at the end of the day, the Mid Atlantic slave trade, like the South ran on a slave economy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about having a place like if you have a place that runs on a different style economy, obviously there's going to be friction. And, you know, it's kind of the age old tale of the individuals with money and power are going to do everything they can to retain that money and power. There was a really good book that I read like a year or two ago. It was called White Trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and mind you, it's a long read. I highly recommend doing the audiobook version of it. Um, but basically, it looks, we think, the modern day version of white trash is like the trailer parks and like Florida Man and all that stuff. But this book, it goes back to approximately the 1600s in the history of like the quote unquote po white people. And a big part of the white trash as a class or a group of people is literally in the southern plantation slave economy you have it's kind of like the what was the Wall Street protests a couple of
Occupy
years ago,
Wall
whatever they
Street.
called it. It was like yeah, Occupy Wall Street. Their thing was like the 1%, right? Or the 99%. Well, in the slave economy of the South, it was very much similar, where you had 1% of people who held a majority of the wealth and resources and power, and they were your predominant like major slave owners. Well, in a slave economy, you don't really have that big of a middle class. It's either like the very small rich class or a very large poor class. And aside from the free labor aspect of slavery, the rich in this book, it posits the idea that the way that rich white people kept poor white people in check was basically propagating all of the racist aspects of slavery. So the ideas that, like the phrenology stuff where, you know, they are, people who are enslaved are not as intelligent, or, all that nonsense, which we obviously know today is utter bullshit. But it makes sense because it's like, how do you keep your, poor white pitchfork wielding people from not tossing you out of your antebellum South plantation? Well, you tell them that, yeah, you might be poor, but you're not a slave, so yeah, they're the people who like, and after a long, it's one of those things that they get told this long enough that they buy into it, and then we do get the Civil War where you get people who are fighting in the South, like, you know a majority of people in the Confederate Army didn't own slaves, but they were 100% for the idea and for the system of it, because they had generations of being told that, like, yeah, this is where it's at. And it's the same thing. You have a bunch of, like, a small class of rich white people who are more or less taking advantage of another class of individuals.
Yeah.
But yes, check out the book White Trash. It makes that argument in a way smarter idea, or smarter words than me. But essentially, the the big takeaway from it is it comes down to a money thing and keeping lower classes in check.
Yeah. The status quo.
Right, from a variety of, like, standpoints. Like, whatever way they can sell the idea of it, then that's how they're going to do it. And I would like to say it's the position of this show that slavery is bad. We do not support
Absolutely,
it.
yeah.
And we are 100% for the Union kicking the
Hell yeah.
Confederacy's ass.
And then here we have two Southern guests in a row.
Oh, well, JD's from Missouri, I think. So Missouri was kind of like 50-50,
I thought
think.
it was the South. At least I consider it the South.
There was some union units.
Some Union units.
Say that 5 times fast. Okay, yeah, because, like, my great whatever, he fought in a Union cavalry regiment from Missouri.
Cool.
Anyways, I don't really know what the civil. Oh yeah, molasses and rum. Molasses and rum to slaves.
The triangle trade.
I will say that song was a bop.
It was a bop.
I haven't done any kind of performative art thing since, like, high school. But if there was a chance for me to try out for the guy who's, I think his name was Rutledge, if there was an opportunity for me to try out just to sing that song, I 100% would do it.
Oh, you would kill it. I know you would.
If you were to participate in this in a production of the Pure Players, what role would you go for?
Rutledge was the guy that rode in with that orange coat, right?
He was the one with, like, the satin, like, silk.
The flamboyant one.
Yes. The very puffy, like, wrist collar things.
Well, yeah, I was going to say him, but you have him covered. Maybe if I gain 100 pounds and start going bald, then maybe I'll think about Benjamin Franklin. Hell, maybe John Adams.
I'm not sure if you're cranky enough to be John Adams.
Nah, no, I'm not.
It's like, did you ever... And here's the thing. I thought that William Daniels did a stellar job playing John Adams, and it was weird seeing like a young version of him because I don't know if you ever watched Boy Meets World, but that was like my introduction to him was Principal
See,
Feeney,
my introduction to we're talking about the same thing, right? John Adams or the actor?
the actor who played John
Right,
Adams.
but on a related note, my introduction to John Adams was the HBO miniseries from 2008. Paul
Oh yes,
Giamatti,
with
yeah, I think
Paul
he
Giamatti.
killed it as John Adams.
I love
Yeah,
that
it's a good one.
series. We should do that as a series of bonus reels
How many
someday.
series do we have on the docket? Because I know we have the Pacific, we have Band of Brothers, now we have John Adams.
Well, it's hilarious considering that we have Band of Brothers on our list of stuff to review, and I'm trying to think when this episode will be out. Yeah, this episode should be out by the time before we've recorded the next episode. Anyways, we have a special guest coming on who was one of the actors from Band of Brothers, and we're not talking about Band of Brothers. So, it's the guest rule is they get to pick whatever they want to watch. So I'm like,
Are
all
we
right,
are
cool,
we gonna
whatever.
pitch the idea of him coming along for a Band of Brothers review?
Maybe he actually runs his own podcast, which is all about
Maybe
Band
we
of
can be
Brothers. So
guests.
depends if he likes us or not.
I'll do everything in my power to be likable, as I always do. I can't help it. I'm a Leo.
But he chose a German miniseries. It was like three
Ah,
episodes. It was going to be total watch time on is 4 hours. But I digress. If you want to know more about our Band of Brothers guests, you're going to have to wait until we
I
release the
see.
episode.
You tease.
Just a little bit of a
Got to
tease.
keep them wanting, I guess.
The thing that I found interesting though about this is that I think it was Ben Franklin, um, Howard Da Silva. That was the
Ah,
name of the actor. Anyways, did you know he was actually in the original cast for Oklahoma?
Oklahoma, where the wind goes sweeping down the plains.
Yeah, this movie is a weird cross section of like some OG Broadway performers from like the 40s and then a bunch of like C-list actors from the 90s. It's just a weird combination.
Poor Judd is dead. Yeah, that was the I wasn't in it, but that was the fall 2009 play when I was in high school. Freshman year.
I feel like every high school does that except for mine.
What plays did your high school do?
Like some really big ones. They did Wizard of Oz,
Hmm.
um, Grease, Sound of Music,
Ah.
which I have a beef with Sound of Music. I don't have a problem with the production itself. I got a little butthurt when I was in high school.
What? Let me guess. You had to watch the entire movie for a class.
No,
Oh,
we
okay.
we didn't actually. But so I was never really big into theater performances. I did like a competitive thing. It was called large and individual groups, like large group speech and individual speech. So like there was a bunch of different categories where it'd be like improv or like musical theater or like a one act play type deal for large group, and then basically all the same categories for individual, but you were just by yourself. So I was all for performing arts if it was a competition, which probably should have like I can talk with that with like my friends someday, but But anyways, so I did all of the like competitive performing arts stuff, which sounds like an oxymoron, but anyways, the teacher who did this, she also did all of the like the theater stuff for the school, so like the productions. And like every year she would come to me and she's like, "Hey, would you come and do this role for this one?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to." Mostly because I didn't care for her because she was that teacher, if you catch my drift. Um a nice, not a nice word,
Yeah.
if you will.
I'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes, to a degree. Um, and I really only had enough energy to put up with her through, um, like the competitive stuff. But she came to me when they were doing Sound and Music, and she's like, "We could really use your help, and we'd really appreciate it if you would try out for the play." I'm like, "No, I'm sorry. I really don't feel like doing it. Like, you know, I'd always come up with some, excuse like I got this other thing I'm working on right now, like with Boy Scouts or some shit. Which, to be fair, I was always pretty busy with them. But she tried like two or three different times to get me to try out for Sound of Music, and like the third and last time that made me lose it, she like came up to me. She's like, "I just think you would be perfect filling in the role of like a big scary Nazi." I'm like, "Excuse me." Would you care to fucking elaborate on why you think I would look great as a big scary Nazi? Like, I
Oh,
get it.
that's funny.
In high school. I shaved my head because that was the easiest
Oh,
hair. It was the easiest haircut for me. I could do it for myself at home. Like, you knew me in college. Like, I did the shaved head thing for like up until senior year, basically.
yeah. And the one time I shaved my head, you kept chanting one of us whenever we hung out.
You should come back. Actually, I can't
No, I'm not.
because I've grown my hair out now.
Looks good.
It's surprising what having a wife will do for your hairstyling. But yeah, so I have a beef with. Ever since then, I refused to watch Sound of Music because it always brings up that memory. It was like, thanks. That was really great for my self esteem. There is telling me that I look like a perfect Nazi.
um, my compunction with the Sound of Music. I'm about to spoil it for you. I'm sorry. I know it's on our list, but at the end of the movie, they escape and they go across the Swiss border at a certain spot. I can't remember where it's at. But if they were to cross that particular spot, it would just take them it would just take them into Germany.
One of us.
Yeah, like that's not a good escape plan. You're supposed to escape from the Nazis and not go further into their clutches. But what do I know?
Nothing. You failed geography.
Yeah. I just made the geography bee every year it was available. Again, what do I know about geography? John.
Anyways, aside from Molasses to Rum, what was your favorite song in this?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that rum and molasses and slaves. He really hams it up.
Is so operatic.
It really is.
I really liked. I appreciate that they gave an entire song to Henry Lee. Just kind of the most, like, he wasn't all that terror. Like, yeah, he was an original member of Congress and a signer of the Declaration, but like, he wasn't a John Adams and he wasn't a Thomas Jefferson. He was just one of the guys, if you will. And the fact that they just did an entire song making fun of the fact that his last name was Lee. So they're like, let's have every adjective that ends with ly in this song. I will leave immediately.
just
Peter Lee.
just roasting him for his name. Classic.
Oh my god. I will say, like, something I appreciate in this movie and just in the portrayal of the story, I think John Adams makes for a great center point in the telling of the story of the Declaration of Independence. Even though sometimes it can come across as like he's the only one that wants it. Like there's plenty of guys in Congress who wants this goal. It's just they're politicians, so every politician is trying to get as good of a deal for whatever they're polling for in the process. But like it just I had to Google a word he said in this musical, and it was fribble.
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 What's that mean?
Like he used it as an insult against I forget who. Um, but fribble means a frivolous or foolish person.
Huh.
Is like if I called you a fribble, it's the same thing as calling you an idiot. And I was like, I can't wait to like pull that on somebody just someday, just so they can be like, "What the fuck did you call me?" But like the scene where they're making the redactions to the Declaration of Independence, and like everybody wants their like 2 cents. I burst out laughing when one dude's like, I see here that there's no mention of fishing rights. And he's like, my God, how could we have forgotten the fishing rights?
Oh yeah, and they just like roast the inanity of it all.
I gotta say, 1776 Congress seemed a lot more entertaining than today's Congress.
I was gonna bring up that they just seemed well exactly the same, just a bunch of old white guys arguing over trivial bullshit, like for instance, fish.
Yeah, but at least they could like the name calling was more creative back then.
Yeah, now it's just Nazi this and Nazi that.
You're a Nazi. Okay, liberal cuck. Like, come on,
What
guys.
happened?
Well, the problem is nobody in Congress owns a fucking dictionary.
Yeah, we sure know how to pick them, don't we?
It is also the official position of this podcast that we are not team either party.
Mm-hmm.
Fudge them.
Fudge him.
Bull moose life.
Bull moose for life.
It's been downhill ever since Teddy left the office.
Yeah.
So what did you think of like they obviously in real life George Washington was busy leading the army, but the constant interjection of um like his letters basically being like, yeah, like I think George Washington is probably like the most famous of all the founding fathers,
Mm-hmm.
with maybe the exception being Jefferson. But I found it interesting that they continuously had him in the story without him actually ever being there.
You know, I read somewhere that out of all the US presidents up until the time the slaves were freed, like among the African American population, Washington was the favorite among them. And yes, even more so than Lincoln. And that's why there's so many black families today with the surname Washington, because that was the name they picked for themselves when they were freed.
Followed by Jefferson for different reasons.
Ooh, ooh.
Too soon or
Uh,
yeah,
F and A.
like don't get me wrong, I appreciate Jefferson's mind, like the philosophical side of his mind. And obviously he authored, you know, the foundational documents of our government in our country. But also, have you ever gone to Monticello? So he lived. His plantation was called Monticello.
Mm-hmm. He
Have you
designed it
ever
himself.
have you ever gone to Monticello's website?
No, but I'm going there now.
Oh my God, if you and or our listeners have never gone to Monticello's website, you need to, because it is the weirdest way, like them acknowledging the affair that Jefferson, as like a 50-year-old dude, had with a, I believe her name was Sally Hemings.
That sounds about right.
Anyways, at the time, he was like 50 something, and
Mm-hmm.
she was a 14-year-old girl who used to be enslaved to him, and he like freed her when he went over to France because France didn't allow slavery at that point. And Monticello acknowledges it, but the way they write it, it's very like, and then he had he freed this person and they were together for a while, and it's like, guys, we have a different word for that today that you
Yeah,
could be using.
she's was 14 at the time.
Starts with a P, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely an eyebrow raiser.
Yeah, it's like I said, I greatly appreciate the Declaration of Independence. I think it is a masterpiece of written work, but Jefferson was still a super, super problematic guy.
Very. Family Guy has a great joke on him. He's getting his picture, his portrait drawn. Him and his family, and he said, we should get the whole family in on this picture. And then he like gestures off screen, and a bunch of black kids show up.
I haven't watched Family Guy in forever.
You're not missing a whole lot from what I've heard.
I'm sure I'm not. Oh no.
I'm not going to get off on that rant again. I feel like I've ranted about that
You think
every day
that's
for the
bad?
last. You think that's bad? But, I've ranted about Family Guy plenty in the last 10 years.
Um, I love. Speaking of founding fathers, what did you think of my most recent tattoo?
I think it's dope.
If you guys haven't seen it, on our Instagram page, I posted my most recent tattoo I got, which is of George Washington, and I got that done on the 4th of July because America,
America.
America, fuck yeah.
And I got a tattoo recently, but it's just the Jack of Hearts on my left pectoral.
How was that, by the way, like pain wise?
When it started out, I barely felt the needle, but it started to be a bit more painful towards the end, specifically the center, because there's a lot of detail and color. But it wasn't that bad. Like the itching isn't even as bad as it was on my first tattoo on my foot.
I gotta say, this most recent tattoo I had was pretty pretty good pain wise because I got it just on my forearm. And like compared to the tattoo I got before that, I was like, oh, this is a cakewalk because I got the tops of both of my feet done last time.
One of the most painful places to get a tattoo.
Yeah, if I can ever make a recommendation to anybody, it's don't ever get the tops of your feet tattooed. It's fucking stupid.
Well, I thought they turned out well.
No, yeah, they look great. It's just my God, like I apologize to my artist so much because I was like, I'm sorry I'm being a little bitch about this. And he's like, you're fine. And I'm like, doesn't feel like it.
But yeah, All my life I was told getting a tattoo is like the most painful thing ever, but it wasn't that bad. Like even on my first tattoo that was on top of my foot, it's man- manageable pain.
So, what did you think about the length of this movie? Because to me,
Oh
it
my
seemed
god.
it seemed a little dragged out.
Oh yes, it was very dragged out. It was it was quite lengthy.
We could have cut a couple of songs.
Oh yeah, a couple of scenes could have been shortened. I'm sure a lot of the politicking was necessary, but by how much?
Right. Or maybe we didn't, going back to the problematic nature of Jefferson, maybe we didn't need the song by his wife of I love a man who can play the fiddle.
Yeah, wasn't there an entire couple scenes about Jefferson banging his wife?
That just blew my mind that they essentially, because like leading up to his wife, before his wife getting there, you have a scene where there's just like hundreds of crumpled up pieces of paper on the floor in his room, and John
Mhm.
Adams is like, what do you mean you haven't written this? It's been a week already. And he's like, I miss my wife.
I miss my wife. The timing.
His wife shows up, and it's heavily implied that they just do it for the night, and then Jefferson just bangs out the Declaration of Independence. And
God
it's
damn
like,
it.
really, guys, you're going to tell me that the Declaration of Independence was like post nut clarity? Like,
Yep. That's all it was is post nut clarity.
in the course of human events, it becomes necessary to rub one out.
Yeah. Yep, that's how the quote goes.
Mm-hmm. In the pursuit of that booty or something.
Booty.
Oh,
So what you drinking tonight?
oh! I poured myself a Purple Rain.
Oh man, I remember when I could drink those.
I can barely drink them anymore. I
Why is
switched
that?
from like the regular mixer of Squirt to Sprite Zero, so it's less sugary.
No. Yeah, it was. That used to be one of my go-to drinks. But
I'm surprised I can still drink them after one evening with our buddy Mitch.
oh yeah, the year without a Santa Claus.
No, this was after that.
Oh, oh, when was this?
So for our listeners, in the town that we went to college, every bar had like a drink special night,
Yep.
and we have a mutual friend. His name is Mitch, and we went to a place that had something called the booze buffet, where it was like $12 at the door and it was unlimited wells.
Wait, pause. Was this Maya's?
No, it was OLC.
Oh, okay. Continue.
Anywho, we went there with the intention of like, okay, we're going to have two or three drinks because I had like stuff to do the next morning. Um, but even going and getting two or three drinks on booze buffet a night is still cheaper than your, like $5 or $8 drink on any other night. So we went, and I got my first drink, and I'm like, man, this is really strong, but whatever. Um, and I have my second drink, and then when I order my third drink, I'm like, okay, this will be it for the night. And I was feeling pretty good, but I'm like, oh, whatever. Like maybe because it had been like I had gone through some like weight loss recently, so I'm like, oh, my body's just changing and how it's handling alcohol. And it was when I ordered the third drink that I finally saw the bartender making these drinks, and I had been ordering purple rains all night, and they were just doing straight 50-50 of the red and blue Maui with no mixer. And it was at this point that even drunk John could do the math. I'm like, oh God, I am not on drink number 3. I'm on drink number 6. And when you're on drink number 6, you've pretty much made a commitment for the night.
Yeah, you're going down a dark path.
You're like you're like, yes, I could stop now, but the damage is already done.
Yeah, might as well go for broke.
Yeah, so needless to say, Miranda was not happy that. But what are you having?
I just finished it. Estrella Jalisco, imported beer from Mexico.
Hmm.
It's
How very
all right.
American of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, imported beer. How American. And this movie choice is fitting because I recently rewatched the 100th episode of South Park. Gee, I wonder what life was like back in those days. Those days. Those days. Trying to go back in time to 1776.
You gotta just read a book, fat ass. Well, if you don't like it, you get out.
I have over 100 hours of the History Channel saved on that device. And when the timer goes off, it's going to drop me into the pool along with the thing electrocuting me.
I should rewatch that episode. Because
Yeah,
I'm a little bit country.
And now a little bit rock and roll.
I think this is probably an episode where we've talked so little about the actual topic.
I think we talked about it as much as we can. But in our defense, it's 2.5, 3 hours. Most of which takes place in one room with the same cast of characters.
Man, 12 Angry Men got really drawn out.
You smartass, that's not what I meant.
The thing is I have that joke saved for about a half dozen movies that we've got to watch coming up. So get ready to be pissed off at it.
God damn it.
So I don't know about you, but I think it might be time to rate this.
Oh, let's go to Rotten Tomatoes.
Well, we gotta do our custom rating first, and
Oh,
I hope you don't mind, but I have an idea for our rating of this.
Go ahead.
So you know how they kept showing the passage of time, like they had the big obnoxious like day calendar where it's like the size of a person. They just tear a sheet off each day. And
yeah,
also, I got kind of mad at that because they would always do it like in the middle of the day or like the end of a scene. And it's like, guys, you got to tear that off at the beginning of the day. So I think there should be 1 to 5 giant calendar sheets.
Yeah, I'm going to give this 4 out of 5 ripped calendar sheets. I'm going to dock 1 for the pacing and the length of it all.
I will agree with you. This is 4 out of 5 calendar sheets. Because one, the songs are truly entertaining. And
toe tappers.
The thing is that if you don't actually really, if you're not like a big history nerd and you aren't really big into the story of how the Declaration actually came to be, like this is a good movie to demonstrate kind of what 1700s politics was like in not a boring fashion. An infinitely better version would be watching the HBO miniseries John Adams, but if you don't have 8 hours to devote to that, you can watch 7076 and you can also get a good chuckle out of Ben Franklin singing about how he wants the turkey to be the national bird. But what does Rotten Tomatoes say?
It is on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics give, God damn it. Critics give this a 74%, and the audience gives this an 84%.
I think the audience score is being a teeny bit generous. I mean, granted, it's only a little bit more than ours, but I still agree with them.
I'll meet in the middle of these twos and give it a 79.
Not a 76.
You got me.
I know. I'm just so smart like that.
Hella.
And I know, obviously this is a bonus reel episode, and this is only our second bonus reel, but we've chatted before about the fact that, you know, you don't always need a like shoot 'em up movie to necessarily be a war movie. I just want to know what your opinion was as far as how close to a war movie do you think this actually is? Because obviously this is about the Revolutionary War. It's about a
Mm-hmm.
pivotal moment in the Revolutionary War, but we never see an actual battle. So I'm just curious, is this a war movie for you? Yes or no?
War adjacent.
War adjacent. I think that's a good way to describe it. Which is
Yeah,
why we
it's a
didn't do
big
this as a
driving
regular
factor.
episode.
It's a big driving factor, that's for sure. That's for sure.
I'm curious.
Which,
I'm looking forward to parsing out the war adjacent category in the future.
yeah, it's definitely going to be contentious.
What do you mean Predator ain't a war movie?
It's man versus beast, the conflict. Conflict as in war. Ergo, it's a war movie.
Okay.
I mean, just look at the Disney Pixar movie Inside Out. In literal internal conflict. Conflict means war.
The
Ergo,
only
it's a war movie,
time
a war within yourself.
the only time Inside Out comes remotely close to being a war movie is when Lewis Black blows up.
Yeah, see, you agree that it's a war movie.
I
then,
didn't say
right?
that. I said the closest it gets. Let's not twist my
People
words
blow
here.
up in people blow up in full blown war movies. See what I did there? Shit. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up for this episode.
Sounds good. Well, before we sign off, if you liked the episode, please leave a review. The stars do matter.
Wait, actually, I have an announcement to make.
You have something. Holy shit. You have an announcement.
Shut up. But there's a movie shooting this month in Pier about the Battle of Kursk, and I expressed interest in it with the director, and he got back to me today and offered me a bigger part in the movie. I don't know what that means yet.
Oh, you're actually going to be
exciting.
in it.
Hey, shut up. I was in a movie before.
I'm not saying that as a surprise. I'm happy for you.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, so that's exciting news from my end.
Will the director be willing to come on as a guest after the movie's released?
I'll ask him.
And
that's going to be my pick if and when it comes out.
Okay, well, stellar. I'm happy for you.
I just got to warn you, this is not a high budget production.
Is like a Dolph Lundgren straight to DVD type deal?
Yes, probably.
Whatever. Even those can be entertaining.
Yeah. That same guy also made a movie about the Battle of the Bulge. And I'm told the review I read called it the Battle of the Budget. What I'm saying is
we didn't have money for snow. We had to use potato flakes. What?
I wasn't a part of that movie, but Levi was, and Tom Berenger was in it. Remember him?
Where's that intel on those goddamn Panzers?
Panzers! Yep, that's the movie. I haven't seen it yet either. I haven't even seen the first movie I was in, Dust of War, and that was 12 years ago.
I didn't realize you were in another movie. I'm going to have to Google this now.
It's awful. Don't watch it. I haven't watched it.
Too late.
Because I'm told it's bad. Shut up. But no, yeah, Dust of War by Luke Schutzel.
Post-apocalyptic American frontier. So what is your role in this?
Poker playing soldier.
It's not rated. Ooh, scandalous.
I know, right? It gets pretty X-rated. But
how could IMDb only give this a 3.9?
I know. It's a fucking masterpiece. But anyway, it was me, one of my classmates named Doug, and my buddy Jake. And, you know, we got there, and they had all these dirty-ass uniforms. Like, my pants were from the Civil War, like a Union soldier's pants. But the jacket I had was from Vietnam. And my hat was a Union soldier's hat. And my buddy Doug just got, like, shorts and a Army Corps of Engineers button-up. And my buddy Jake was in full desert camo. So, yeah, it was very eclectic, our uniforms. And they plopped down a deck of cards and gave us a bunch of tiny rocks and told us, make a game out of this. So my buddy Jake got an idea. He proposed the game Jake Wins. I hate that game. I always lose. But what we were supposed to do...
That's where you have to come up with a BS rule where, like, if you get a certain hand combo, then you get to drop a letter from your name or add a letter.
But, like, we were playing this, and during our scene, the protagonist walks by in chains. And when he got to a certain point, we agreed that up until this point, we were, like, into the game, into this non-existent game. Like, we had each a handful of rocks, and we were shaking them, like, come on, let's go. And then when he got to a certain spot, we threw the rocks down, and me and Doug went, oh! But Jake went, yeah! And he collected all the rocks for himself.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it was hilarious. And then I also had this other brief part later that same day where I had to supervise a bunch of child soldiers, and they were beating the shit out of the crippled one. And they gave me a baseball bat and a fake Glock. And they told me, like, pose with this. So I, like, put the baseball bat across my shoulders and, like, wrapped my arms around it, draped it down while holding the pistol and watching them. And my buddy Graham, who's the brother of the director, comes up to me afterwards and says, dude, you look so badass. Oh, man, that was a good time.
But were you badass?
No.
Oh.
Not actually, but the audience doesn't need to know this.
Oh, that's fair.
I'll see if I can find a picture of it and send you.
Well, you know what I'm going to choose the next time it's my turn?
If you say Dust of War, I swear to God, I will touch you right on your penis.
Is that supposed to be a deterrent?
Maybe. I didn't think I'd get this far.
Anyways, we need to bring this episode to a close for no particular reason.
Okay.
That was supposed to be a you touching my penis joke.
You know it's not a joke.
I am a happily married man.
I'm not.
Butters!
Little hamburgers.
Oh, wow. Dad went to this place and wrestled a whole lot of men.
One guy had him pinned for 10 minutes.
Must make clean.
Miss, Make clean.
All right, as I was saying, if you like the show or the episode, leave us a review. The stars do matter. Please don't give us a bad review because we said stupid shit for the last 20 minutes. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at the Armchair Commanders podcast. And we have greatly enjoyed having you with us. My name is John,
And I'm Jack.
and we will catch you next time.
Bye.